Well, the first time he spoke to Volodymyr Zelenskyy, US President Donald Trump tried to pressurize Ukraine's new leader to dig up dirt on Joe Biden ahead of the 2020 elections. It was a 2019 phone call that eventually sparked an impeachment. On Friday, that's yesterday, a meeting in the Oval Office at the White House in what started out with a cordial welcome became heated, went out of hand towards the end with US Vice President JD Vance telling Zelenskyy to show more gratitude to the US and towards Trump before the President Trump himself screamed at Zelenskyy. Take a look.
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America. And for the good of the world, I'm aligned with the world. And I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way, so that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden, of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014 and 2014.
2014?
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversations, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, Everybody has problems, even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards.
Mr. President.
You're playing cards.
Serious.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
you invited me
if you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on over there. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. Listen, you're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. You got to be more thankful. Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
Okay, the reason I wanted to play that entire excerpt out, it was roughly about 8 minutes, but wanted to put the full picture out. It's the most intense piece of television you will see in a very, 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 very long time. I couldn't stop watching it last night. Most people, it happened a little after 10 p.m. and we were live until midnight, a little after midnight on Indian television, cutting pieces of that. And we have a good panel this evening to discuss what's next. Professor Madhav Nalapat is a geopolitical expert, joins us live. I have Major General JD Vance, who's a defense expert, joining us live from Delhi. Alexander Shahjan, who's a Republican leader, joining us live from the US. Dr. Roxanne Zigon, who's a political expert, joining us live. And she's giving us a Russian perspective. Patrick Lancaster has covered the war. I'll just fix that label there. It's not really a Ukrainian view. Patrick Lancaster was on the front lines. He reported for Republic TV from the front lines, for many, 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 many months. And we'll get the ground perspective from him. And Ruslan Botnik is the director of the Ukrainian Institute of Politics for a Ukrainian view. Let me start with you, Ruslan. What are the people of Ukraine thinking? Because there are different polls showing different views of what Ukraine wants now. Do the people of Ukraine want the war or want the war to end?
It's not an easy question, but if we are going into the sociological surveys, public opinion surveys, we can see that from the half till 70% of Ukrainians are willing to stop the war. are willing to end the war. But this group is very divided for two parts. Half of this group, of peacemaking group, is standing for the freezing the conflict. Another part standing for even compromises with Russia. So this part, this public demand for the peace is also divided. Only 25–30% of Ukrainians are standing for the continuation of the war, for the liberation of all occupied lands.
Yeah. So there you have it, 25%. Professor Madhav Dalapat, let me bring you in to get this started. If only 25% of Ukrainians want the war, then why isn't Zelensky keen on ending the war?
Look, the fact of the matter is that all that President Trump is saying is what Prime Minister Modi has been saying from April 2022 onwards, which is, it's time for peace, end the war now. Imagine what would have happened if the war had ended in April 2022. How many lives would have been saved? Ukrainian lives, Russian lives. How many lives in the global south could have been rescued from the difficulties, the circumstances, that the logistical difficulties and the sanctions brought by this Ukraine conflict, a purely European conflict, if I may add, have brought on the entire global south. I mean, India got the global south into the G20, is now actually the G21 with the Africa Union. Look, I want to say very clearly that the EU talks a lot about Ukraine and helping Ukraine. You know how much Germany has given to Ukraine? I mean, when I last checked, it was exactly 10 tanks. Do you know how much of the assistance that's given by Europe to Ukraine is actual assistance, and how much is a loan? Most of it is a loan. I mean, practically the only country where the assistance is much more than the loan has been the United States under President Biden. So I want to tell you, I mean, will the EU step in and fund what the United States was funding? I mean, at last count, it is about $200 billion and counting. I mean, no European country has funded that. I mean, not as aid, certainly, as loans. And that's their problem now. A lot of UK banks are invested in Ukrainian bonds. A lot of European Union banks are invested in Ukraine bonds. And if you stop the war, well, those bonds are left almost worthless. So frankly, there's a very strong financial motive. But the point is, there's an equal financial motive for the Americans to try and stop this war, for the simple reason that now, what I understand is that the request informally is that please give us one more year. I mean, we heard that in 2022. We heard that in 2023. We heard that in 2024. Putin is going to collapse. Russia is going to break up. Putin is going to collapse. Russia is going to break up. At least change the record. Don't keep playing the same record over and over again, year after year, of this horrible war. And as I think the Americans have pointed out, if it's a meat grinder, the Russians have a lot more meat than the Ukrainians. I mean, I don't believe that only 30% of Ukrainians want an end to the war now on whatever terms, because frankly, they know very well, they're realists. The only way the war is going to end is basically, for the best case, as a status quo, an armistice in which Ukraine promises never to join NATO and vice versa. It's not going to happen for less. And I mean, I just want to say, what fantasy land are these people living in? I mean, the EU wanted Ukraine and to essentially blow up the Russia-US talks. That's what the EU wanted. And Zelensky also wants the same thing. By the way, Zelensky wants NATO to intervene in Ukraine. He's been wanting that from 2022, as some of us in India pointed out, from almost the start of this war. And then it will be World War III.
Yeah.
This is not a joke. This is for real. I mean, Zelensky is talking about playing cards. Well, he's playing a very weak deck. And without American support, that entire deck will collapse because the Europeans don't have the financial muscle or, in fact, the manpower. Nobody in Europe is going to want to suffer casualties in the battlefield for Ukraine. You see the first casualties come in, and then you'll see what happens to European public opinion. So please, let's be real. We are from India. Our Prime Minister is real. We said end this war in April 2022. How many lives could have been lost? How many lives have been lost? How much property has been destroyed? How much of the world has suffered because of this war? Obviously, nobody here wants the war to last for even a single hour more. And that's what Trump is asking for. And I think, frankly, he's doing that. I mean, for the United States, he's supposed to be a selfish man looking only at the US. Well, find out a leader who doesn't look out for himself or herself. I mean, Volodymyr Zelenskyy is not looking out for the global south. He's not looking out for the United States. He's looking out for his own interests because he knows he is toast in this kind of a settlement. So please, let's be real, let's be practical, and let's be on the side of peace the way India has been since this horrible war started in February 2022.
Yeah. No, you see, I have Patrick Lancaster, and I felt it's important to get him here because he's been in the front lines. Patrick, are you still covering the war? Are you still on the front lines, still reporting?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. I've been covering the war on the front lines since 2014. I've been covering every hotspot during this almost 11-year war now. I mean, this is long before 2022 when Russia came into it. I'm talking from the beginning when the local population of Donetsk and Lugansk regions had a referendum to break away from Ukraine after Russia took Crimea in. The hope of the local population at that time was that Russia would recognize their vote to break away from Ukraine and take them into Russia. That's what the local people of the Donetsk and the Lugansk areas wanted in 2014. And then we had that preceded this 8-year war before Russia came in, where every local person had a family member or friend who was killed or injured by the Ukrainian shelling on the civilian areas of Donetsk and Lugansk regions. And I've been there covering the story with the people since then. And when Russia finally recognized the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic in 2022, just before Russia came into the war, they were crying in the streets, celebrating the people that live in these regions, because they felt that Russia was coming to help them against the Ukrainian military that had been attacking their cities for 8 years. And of course, we're just passing the mark of the 3-year war that Russia has been involved in. And I still am on the streets talking to the people about what they think. And of course, everyone wants the war to stop. Everyone wants people to stop dying. I go to the frontline positions. I talk to the Russian soldiers about what they want. They as well want peace. No one wants this war to continue. But the only question is, how can this war come to peace through Russian law?
Patrick, can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question?
Yes. Okay,
when you report in the front lines, because that's one of the points that was made yesterday by JD Vance, saying that you're struggling with conscripts, right? They're struggling with people to fight this war. Ukraine, Russia as well. What's the reality on that front when you report in the front lines?
Well, I can tell you, I'm weekly embedded with different battalions and different brigades of the Russian military in the Russian-controlled territory. In the last 5 weeks, I've been on frontline positions in the Kharkov region, Lugansk region, Kursk region, Belgorod region, and more. And I've been talking to the soldiers. Again, I say they want peace. I didn't see any lack of soldiers on on the positions, Russian soldiers on the positions. So as far as lack of soldiers, it doesn't appear in my what I've observed that there is a lack of soldiers in the Russian frontline positions that I've been in. But the fact is, how can this war end as far as Russian law goes? Because regardless what the West says about these territories, right now Russian law says that there's 5 regions of what Russian law considers part of Russia that have Ukrainian troops controlling territory. One, it is the Kursk region, which internationally recognized as part of Russia, always been part of Russia. And there's just under 400 square kilometers of territory controlled by Ukrainian forces. That's down from the 1,500 square kilometers back in August of last year when Ukraine came across the border into Russia. Of course, Zelenskyy says he's going to be trying to use that as a bargaining chip, but there's not much left, and Russia is taking more and more as the days go by back from Ukraine. That goes for all of the frontline regions.
Okay.
In Lugansk, the fact is, Russia has made it very clear that they cannot give up any territorial secessions in the territory that Russian law considers part of Russia. And that's what they're saying. So all this pushing by Zelenskyy and the West of what's Russia going to give up as far as land. Russian laws in the Constitution of Russia says that these 5 regions are part of Russia. And I don't see any way that Russia is going to be stopping while there's still Ukrainian troops on these territories.
Yeah, let me bring in, Alexander Sarjan for the U.S. perspective on this. Alexander, is ceasefire that easy? Even if Donald Trump, the U.S. president, speaks about a possible ceasefire, you just heard Patrick Lancaster. He's embedded with the Russian troops, and the Russians aren't going to slow down, right? And they have more manpower than Ukraine. They can go as far as they want. But is ceasefire that simple?
See, everybody wants an end for this war. The entire world wants an end for this war. Zelenskyy himself said since 2014, when Obama was in the White House, the war was going on. There was attacks and nobody interfered in it. U.S. did not interfere in it. But look what happened during the time of President Trump in 2016 to 2020. There was not much aggression happened in that area. Why? Because there was a diplomatic approach. There was a peaceful approach from the side of President Trump during his first presidency. Then Biden came into power. We all know what happened. A lot of giveaway was happening during that time. Billions of American taxpayers' dollars was funded to Ukraine, to Zelenskyy, and there is a lot of conspiracy, or there is a lot of negative talk about that. I'm not going into the details of that, but we all know billions of dollars was pumped into this war. There was no initiative from the Biden administration side to end this war because everybody has a personal agenda. But when President Trump came back to power again back in 2025, we all know his first priority, one of his very first priorities, was to end this war. And he tried to engage with the Russian president. He tried to talk to the Ukrainian president. He engaged his cabinet members, including the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State. He sent the Secretary of Treasury all the way to Ukraine to talk about negotiation deals. So everything that can be done by this administration was being done from the very first day in the Oval Office. But let me tell you, there was no need for the Ukrainian President Zelenskyy to go into the Oval Office yesterday and become so contentious. When you start talking about that aggressively, and when you know that someone like President Trump is a deal maker, because he made deals all his career. He was a businessman. And when you become that aggressive, you're not going to get stuff done on that team. and especially after his ungrateful and impertinent display at the Oval Office, that this, I'm very sorry to say that, everything that was built for last several weeks kind of collapsed now. Now, you know what is going to happen? Now the Dodge team is going to audit the hundreds of billions of US dollars that was pumped into Ukraine. There was going to be serious investigation into it. So he messed it up, everything. So yes, of course, President Trump he wants a peace deal. That's why he said, I'm not aligned with Russia. I'm not aligned with anyone else. I'm aligned with the United States of America. I'm aligned with the world for a peaceful deal, for an end of this war. Yes, that's why he wanted a ceasefire. That's why he wanted an immediate ceasefire so that we could build from there. But he was very tricky on it. He thought that he could play very smart, just the way he did with the Biden administration for last 4 years. No, that is not going to happen. This is a completely different administration who don't encourage war, who don't want conflicts between nations. This is why I think the world and European Union is not doing any favor into this issue. India always, Prime Minister Modi always wanted a peace deal. He tried to engage in it. And now Hungary wants a peace deal. But European Union, just like we heard before, they don't want to end this. And I seriously doubt even Zelenskyy wants to end this war, because as soon as the war is done, his funding is done. So yes, the ceasefire, the only person who could take a decision in this is Zelenskyy. If he is willing to come back, President Trump very politely and nicely said, even after all those heated exchange, he made it very clear he can come back anytime when he's ready for a peace deal.
Yeah. General JD Bakshi and Roxanne haven't spoken, so let me get General JD Bakshi first up. General Bakshi, I felt after looking at that video, because there are some sections of media that are just taking the part where Trump intervenes or JD Vance jumps in and saying that Zelenskyy was set up, Zelenskyy was confronted, right? But there is also when you look at that video in entirety, right? When you look at the video in entirety, it appears that Zelenskyy was coming from a position of authority, almost to suggest that America owed him that support, right? A bit smug. You think he blew it up?
Absolutely. Niranjan, absolutely. Zelenskyy was being quite delusional. He was talking as if he'd won the war and he could, give a shouting match, give a lesson to Donald Trump. I think his plan was to go over Donald Trump's head and address the American people directly through these farce of talks. I understand he had been asked by the Trump team, look, if you want to do media grandstanding, don't waste our time, don't come here. He said, no, I want to do a deal, and he came here and he did exactly that. Look, the Ukrainian army, I'm telling you as a military man, the Ukrainian army has been destroyed 3 to 4 times over. Had it not been for the United States and its very abundant military assistance, Ukraine would have been dead as a dodo. And that would have happened almost 2 years back. It's only because of very steadfast American support, $350 billion worth of American aid. The maximum quantity of military aid has come from the United States. Europe has just done a bit of tokenism. And for Zelenskyy to try and, browbeat to browbeat Donald Trump, he must be delusional. He owes his existence. His army can't fight for a week if the Americans cut off the ammunition, take back the HIMARS, take back the ATACMs, if the Americans stop the cyber warfare support, the intelligence satellite support that they are giving so generously all this while, all the missiles striking the the Russians have been, the targeting data comes from the Americans, from the European, all that, the Starlinks. satellite chains which Zelenskyy is using to fly his drones against the Russians, they will all come to a crashing halt. He can't fight 2 weeks on his own. And yet it is chutzpah, man. The way he was going on and on, ranting and raving and trying to, behave as if he was a superpower. Give us a break. You are a country which is on the run right now. 2 lakh Ukrainian soldiers, 200,000 are surrendering, have surrendered, have run away from the battlefield. I mean, they have deserted. They have lost 1 million men. 8 million have fled Ukraine to go out to rest of Europe and elsewhere. Right? They are scraping the bottom of the manpower barrel. Under the Joe Biden regime's advice, they reduced the recruiting age, the mobilization age from 25 to 18, so that they could scrounge up all the teenagers. Any leader of a country cares for his people. This man has become a megalomaniac. He doesn't seem to give a damn. How many Ukrainians died? Joe Biden wanted to use Ukraine as a battering ram. Joe Biden wanted to fight Russia till the last Ukrainian. Here is the man ensuring that he will fight. He's been given an off-ramp. He's been given a chance for peace. He's been given a chance to stop the destruction of his country and his people. But this megalomaniac thinks he's some Churchill reborn. He's trying to tell the United States what to do. That you bloody well will give me the weapons and the aid, otherwise I'm going over your head to the American people. I think he's made a jackass of himself in front of the American media and to the whole world.
Yeah.
How ingrateful can you get? How ungrateful can you get? I mean, $350 billion, your army would have been hostage combat almost 2 years ago. But just because of re-injection of weapons, the Leopard tanks from Germany, 10, 15 odd, most of them are Abrams, most of them are your Patriots defending your skies, and despite all that, the impression one got was that it was Donald Trump who was a supplicant for peace. But I think there's no shame in being asking for peace. Donald Trump is doing the whole world a good turn. This stupid conflict has gone on long enough. And as far as the Europeans who are now claiming that they will fight on till another 100 years, World War I happened in Europe, World War II happened in Europe, they want World War III also to happen in Europe. How much have they actually shelled out? They have just given loans. It is the American people, taxpayer, who will shelled out money for this war. How long can they go on bearing this burden?
I see.
And I think it was downright stupid and delusional of Zelenskyy to have hectored, the United States, the President of the United States, no less, like the way he did. And he tried to make a public show out of it. Yeah. Everybody knows that he was a comedian who was elected on the promise that he would get peace with Russia. We've seen the peace he's gotten with Russia.
I'm seeing the kind of reactions. I'm seeing some reactions, very strong reactions to what you're saying. And you have very, very strong views on that. Dr. Roxanne hasn't spoken, so I want to go across to her. She's our final speaker on the debate. But Dr. Roxanne, I'll tell you, just a small summary that I want to give you. We've covered the war very closely, right? When the war broke out, Republic had a 10 to 11 member crew, including Patrick, who's here. We sent our crews from here and we've covered the war. And we knew at some stage this war is not going to end anytime soon, right? What we also now gather, and as you look deeper into the sequence of events, the billions of dollars going into Ukraine, did all that money really, get used in the war? We don't know. But what is even more alarming today is after he's landed in London, there seems to be a clear divide between America on one hand, UK and European Union on the other, with the Ukraine summit or something that UK and EU are holding now. It's not going to augur well for Europe and Ukraine to confront someone like a Trump and America. What's your take on the developments?
First of all, gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to express my opinion. Frankly speaking, I have been listening all the panelists, and I have mentioned that all of them were quite emotional and descriptive. So let me just put the things in a proper order. What we have seen now in Washington, the appearance of Zelensky and that ridiculous, unprecedented behavior, it's actually a testimony of the complete and total collapse of the diplomatic culture, of the diplomatic rhetoric. We have seen that Zelensky is fully charged in the direction of war. Actually, we are witnessing a situation, not just even between the war and peace, we are witnessing a situation of a twilight zone. And that big twilight zone is claimed to be European Union. This is what we have seen. The scene number one, we have seen Donald Trump, the President of the United States, having been giving all his efforts to get closer to the position of the Russian president. And the scene number two, we have seen Mr. Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, who has been exposing an unprecedentedly inappropriate way of obstructing the way towards peace. So what about the European Union? I think that Zelenskyy has arrived to Washington with a double pocket message. The first message was to approve his position with his European allies, who are irrationally believing that that can go on with this crisis and they can still be on the round table in regard to the peace deal. And this is absolutely impossible. The second message that he was trying to deliver to Donald Trump is that he has guts and he is not willing to negotiate, and he is definitely affirmed to continue that war. So what is going to happen next? Definitely, we're not going to see a peace deal with all the participants, I mean, Ukraine and the European Union. They're deliberately moving out of that process. In the history of diplomacy, we have never seen such a situation. In diplomacy, there can be different pebbles, there can be different problems, but we have seen how a tiny pebble called Zelensky has been creating a really rocky situation, a situation which is causing an unprecedented conflict between all the parties, America versus European Union versus Russia, Ukraine, etc. And practically speaking, no one is taking into consideration the interests of the global South. And definitely the situation cannot go on.
Yeah. I'll get each one of you in for 30 seconds. I'll get your last, takes on this, because I want to play out. I wanted to end this show with that entire sequence once again. I mean, somewhere in between, Trump also says it's great TV. I don't know why he said that, whether it was deliberate, whether Zelensky was set up. But it is great TV. I've never seen something like that. Professor Nalapat, if I can get your take in about 30 seconds, the way you see it, the war, the direction it's taking now.
Well, first I'd like to tell you, Zelensky and the Europeans who want war have an ally in much of US media. They've been backing this war. They've been backing this so-called retaking of the lost territories right from 2014 onwards, and they're supercharged from 2022. So essentially, the media has been doing the fighting. Now, the second thing is that what Zelensky wants is a break in the US-Russia the talks, because that he was abusing Putin, so Trump will have to rise to the bait and abuse Putin. Look, Trump wants peace, and Zelensky's gamble is that the US public is not interested in peace. The US public voted in Trump because he said from day one, I want peace from day one of my administration. That's why he got the vote. And you think he's going to walk away from that? Just like any other politician, as far as the EU is concerned, they cannot break away from the United States. The United States has understood the new geopolitics. It's the Indo-Pacific, it's China, it's no longer the Atlantic, it's no longer Europe, it's no longer the Soviet Union or Russia. And if you think you're going to basically have Russia collapse the way the USSR collapsed, and I've heard that many times from friends in Washington, from 2021 onward, before this war started, and 22, 23, 24, they were highly optimistic that Russia would collapse
Yeah.
and Putin would absolutely, be taken down or have a meltdown.
Yeah.
And I told them, please, we know the Russians. We know how they fought World War II. It's not going to happen. And now I think more and more of them understand that
Yeah.
possibly the Indians were right. Prime Minister Modi was right. That peace is the only
Yeah.
side that can show victory.
Yeah.
That
Professor
peace is a
Nalapal.
position Zelensky is not willing to take.
Yeah, I'm running out of time, so I just quickly need to bring in the rest for 20 seconds each. Okay, Alexander, can Europe fund this war going forward? In 20 seconds, if you can give me your takeaway on that.
Let me make it very short. United States of America right now have a president who is not scared to speak the truth to anybody, anywhere, anytime. Okay? And he is going to stand up against the Washington's endless wars policy. The deep state, they want war. So he is going to stand up against that. American taxpayers have been funding this war for last several years.
Yeah.
And it is time to stop the killing and stop risking the World War III. And that is the take of the United States of America.
Yeah.
That is the take of the US citizens. That is the take of the current administration.
Patrick, quickly, in 20 seconds, without American dollars, can Ukraine sustain the war?
Well, I know without American support, as everyone knows, the war would have stopped years ago, literally. And that's what the Russian soldiers I talked to on the ground, when I asked them about what they thought about Trump's promises to end the war. They said they hope he does, they pray he does, because they want peace as well. Everyone wants peace. And I asked, can Trump ensure peace? They said, stop sending Ukraine weapons and there will be peace right away.
Okay. Dr. Roxanne, do you think he will sign the mineral deal? Will he come back to the table, or will he harden his position with Europe and UK backing him?
I believe in the circling of the things in diplomacy. I guess that was a first kick or a first signal message to Zelensky that he has to come back home and to rethink his position. That's why Donald Trump has opened the door open, and that's a good sign. Definitely, Zelensky will try to cope with the EU allies, but unfortunately, the leadership in Europe now is completely impotent. And Trump is fully aware that the members of the European Union are practically not capable to raise their military budget up to 5%. That will be a total collapse. This is a delusion.
Yeah.
So I believe that Mr. Zelensky will definitely, in a short term, will reconsider his position, will express his politeness and political courtesy, and they will get back to the discussion about the minerals deal.
Finally,
and second thing, which is really important, geopolitically speaking, you have mentioned that Russia has been truly patient. Russia has been not part of this scandalous landscape. Russia gives all the opportunity to see the media and the whole world what kind of personage and enfant terrible used to be Zelensky, and what kind of rotten asset in a political and geopolitical sense he is. And I believe that all the parties will be driven towards getting rid of that bad asset.
Yeah. Finally, Jalbakshi, I'll end with you. Quickly, in about 30 seconds, if you can tell me, given what Trump called Zelensky, he called him a comedian, he called him a dictator, he said he would be soon out of power and would lose Ukraine as well. That could have been he'd set the stage before Zelensky came to the US. Do you think Zelensky will last in power?
I have my serious doubts and reservations. After all, there is a popular mood undercurrent in Ukraine. They have been seeing the killing, the non-stop bleeding white of their population, and there is a point at which it will have to end. 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers have deserted the front lines, right?
Yeah.
It is not a good augury. The number is too huge. It just shows you what the troops are feeling. They have been set up in a hopeless war. And now when they see their leader trying to smack the United States in the face from where they were getting their ammunition, their weapons, their equipment, and the wherewithal to fight, the satellite intelligence support, minute-to-minute battlefield intelligence, cyber warfare support, everything gone. And you think they are going to be very enthused? I wouldn't be too surprised if there is a coup in the Ukrainian army. They're also at the end of their tether. They were hoping that peace would come. This man has blown it in their faces. He's a megalomaniac who would like to see the last Ukrainian dying in his crusade against the Russians. And he has let his country be used. You know, Pakistan and Ukraine are two countries who have let their land be rented out to, you know, cause harm to their neighbors. The only harm that has come is to themselves.
That's quite a comparison there. Yeah, quite a comparison there when you brought in Pakistan there. But thank you very much. It's very, 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 very interesting what happens next. Professor Nalapat, General Bakshi, Alexander, Dr. Roxanne and Patrick, thank you for joining us on The Burning Question tonight. I want to end the show with that sequence that the entire world is talking about. That showdown at the Oval Office in the White House.
Well, if I didn't align myself with both of them, you'd never have a deal. You want me to say really terrible things about Putin and then say, "Hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal?" That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America and for the good of the world. I'm aligned with the world. And I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, you know, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014 and
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What